live from Dublin. Which airport do I go to? You mean in London, Stansted, Larry? Well, for this flight, it's not the closest to where I am. I much prefer Gatwick, but to get those cheap flights, it's Stansted. It is Ryanair. Right, welcome everyone. If you are new to me, if you don't know what you've just clicked on, this is a live stream, live from Ireland. We are in Dublin. It's nearly 10 p.m. Irish time, and we'll be starting in about 10 minutes. So if any of you are watching the replay in the next few weeks or months or days, if you want to go straight into the live walking tour, feel free to skip the next 10 minutes. Because we'll just be here waiting for everyone to connect. Hello again, Tish. Hello again, Catherine. Hello again, Ronnie. I've seen most of you in the chat already, but nice to have you along. Hi, Nefarious Enough. Nice to see you here. So most of you know the drill. I'm going to have to test the microphone because it could get disconnected. Hi, Trish. Hi, Sandrine. Nice to see you here. I'm gonna be tapping the mic 3 times. Let me know in the chat whether you've heard that. You should have been able to hear a clear tapping because I've got lots of little connection. It could. You've heard it. Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Tish. If at any point through the tour you start hearing some weird noises or some wind or anything, let me know. Perfect. Thank you, Gregory. So we've got a few minutes before to go. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So tonight we're going for a live walk in Dublin where I'll tell you some dark tales. Hi, Sandy. And of course, most of you know, but I'm not from here, so I don't know everything. I've done my homework, but I might not know every single building and all that. I've only arrived here a few hours ago, actually, because I came on Monday, but I went straight down to the south and to Bray. And then I went west with Hazel, that most of you know from live streaming as well, and Dave. We went down to Dublin, next to close to Galway. So I was in Galway this morning. So I've literally just arrived in Dublin this afternoon. So I've had time to quickly walk my route, but it's still very fresh. The ferries have been good. They've not done anything. For the ones that don't know, the ferries in Ireland, they can be a bit nasty. They're not like the tiny little cute one in Peter Pan. You can have some bad ones. But they've been good to me so far. Or I've been good to them, I don't know. Hi, Carol, welcome. And welcome anyone that just joined. We've got a few minutes to go. I'll show you a glimpse of the view. You see the tram coming in front of us. And welcome, Yancy. I did not see you in the chat, but if Tish says you're here, I guess you're here. Now, we are not in the touristy part of town yet. We'll start with the dark side, and then we'll go down to Temple Bar and the Christmas lights and all that. And we've got about 5 minutes to go. Let me check. 6 minutes to go. Even the ferries are scared of my reputation. Hi, Celia. Oh, you were here for Halloween. How was it? Did you have a good time? Right, let me flip the camera around for now. So we've got about 5 minutes to go. And welcome Lee, nice to see you here. And welcome everyone else that just joined. We've got a few minutes to go. If you happen to be completely new to me, let us know in the chat. Or even if you're watching the replay, let us know in the comments as well. You're preparing for travel? Cool. I've been fairly lucky with the weather, so well, it was raining this morning in Galway, but see, I'm not even wearing a scarf. It's actually fairly warm today, which is lucky. I think last week would have been much colder. Well, at least in London, last week was much colder. So, and I hear it was the same in northern France as well, so it probably was a bit chilly down here as well. And yesterday was beautiful. Well, we did spend a lot of time in the car yesterday, but it was beautiful anyway. Right, let's see what time it is. 4 minutes to go. And Sam is here. Welcome, Sam. Nice to see you here. So it is nearly 10 p.m. in Dublin. I scheduled it a bit late, so it's nice for you guys in America, but also because I was hoping it wouldn't be too busy down the city center, because I want the best signal. Well, it's going to be busy on the Temple Bar anyway. I think it's busy every night. It smells good in your apartment. Nice. What have you been cooking? The tram is back. I've not taken the tram yet. I'm taking the train. Well, I'm taking the Dart tomorrow. I think the Dart is a train. Unless it's a tram, I'll see. I'll take it down to Malahide. Hi Linda, nice to see you here. And welcome Tarek on the Bears, nice to see you here as well. So we've got a couple of minutes before to officially kick off. If you can, through the tour, even if I'm telling you fascinating tales, if you can try to keep the chat active, that helps me, because on YouTube, you know, I'm not using Prism today, I'm straight on YouTube. The chat disappears after, I don't know, 20, 30 seconds, whatever time it can be. But then I've got no way to know whether you guys are still here or not. So yeah, make sure you try to keep it active if you can, even if it's just to send me a heart emoji or whatever it might be. It's helpful. Hi Herbie, nice to see you here. Kaipi, you know what, there's a shop right next to my hostel where they sell those tiny cute little Kaipi stuffed toys or stuffed Kaipi bear. They're very cute. Oh, thanks, Natasha. That's very nice of you. If any of you drop me a little tip on PayPal or buy me a coffee as well, that's always very much appreciated. Right, let's see if it is time. 1 minute. So we've got a bit of a walk today. I hope it's not too long. It's always a bit difficult, you know, when I'm abroad to look at the map and be like, oh, is it too long? Is it too short? It should be fine. Ah, I can hear some bells somewhere, so it must be 10. Let's see. Yes, it is indeed 10 p.m. Welcome everyone, and let me flip this camera around. So, still early in Dublin, yeah. Right, so I decided to start here, not because it's the most beautiful place, it's not, but because this spot is actually very much connected to two of the biggest murder mysteries in Dublin. Well, mysteries. I would say that both of them are no longer mysteries anymore, but we are not actually going to go down that way because it's a university campus. I don't think there's much to see anymore. Exactly, Broadstone, Gregory. But can you read up there the Grange Gorman? The Grange Gorman was also a murder, the Grange Gorman murders, and that was a big murder mystery for many, many years. But you know what? I'll get back to that in a moment because that's a long story. Oh, thank you so much, Rachel. So remember the name, the Grange Gorman murders, and I'll tell you about that in a little while. For now, let me tell you about the murder that happened in that building there. This is or was the Broadstone terminus. This was once the main train station into Dublin. If you came down from Galway or pretty much anywhere on the train, you'll end up there. Today it's a bus garage today. They are the main station now. It's probably Euston Station. But back in Victorian times, so we're going back to 1856 to be precise. This was the main train station into Dublin, and it was a very busy building, of course. Hi Jenny, nice to see you here. Very busy with commuters and travelers, and also very busy with staff. Because at the time, some of the staff members lived in the station building itself, and of course you had a lot of staff. You know, you had some handymans, you had the cashier, you had assistants, ticket vendors, or you name it, the cashier was a guy called George Little. He was a very good employee, apparently. He lived or imprisoned. Well, most of them lived. Some of them probably not the best salary, but they were allowed out. So yeah, George was he was actually a very good employee. They trusted him big time. He was the main cashier. So a station like this, of course, would take in a lot of money every day, and they trusted him. But at the time there had been in England a few cashiers in different train stations in the Midlands that had nicked a bit of money from the till and stuff. So they'll of course keep an eye on that. But George was always on time. He was not a drinker. He actually lived with some sisters that were single or widowed. So he had a few people to take care of. And one night, he did not come home. And the next morning, Mr. Burnett Gunning and other staff at the station tried to go into his office, and the office was locked. So it was like, okay, George is not in yet. That's unusual. He wasn't a drinker. He was not one to be late, but hey ho, and the hours went on, and around midday, everyone was starting to wonder where the cashier was. And eventually they decided to send one of the staff down to where George lived to check if he was okay. Now, the building across the street there, this is actually a point of interest on Google Maps. When you go on Google Maps and you've got those it looks like a little castle. It's a point of interest historically. So I clicked on that one. I was like, okay. Apparently, there was a company that was supplying some electrical items. I'm not too sure why it's such a great point of interest, but hey ho. Thank you, Diane. There's a nice little pub here. with, of course, the Guinness logo. And you know what? Because it's quite bright over here, let me show you something I've learned yesterday. See, that's the Guinness logo there, the harp, of course. The harp is it's a very important symbol in Ireland. I think they've got the oldest harp in the country in Trinity College. Anyway, so that's the Guinness logo. Let me show you the national emblem. It's a harp as well, but the other way around. So that's that little harp there. So that's on the €2 or any euros. The euros, I shouldn't say euros. We don't put an S at euro because it's not in every country in Europe. So in theory, we should say €2, not 2 euros. But anyway, so this, sorry, it's not focusing. So that's the €2. Although you can have them all across Europe. On the back of the euro, you've got the national or whatever the country wants to print. So if you see, it's the other way around. It's actually because the Guinness logo is much older. Although Guinness was founded in 1759, the logo, I think it's 1876. Yet that's still way before the national emblem that was, so this one is 1922. So would you believe the country itself, when they had to pick their emblem, they didn't want to annoy the Guinness company. They didn't want any copyright issue, so they had to put the harp the other way around, just to respect the trademark. Anyway, let's get back to our little George Little. So the cashier is not at the station. Everyone is started to get worried, and they decided to send a staff down to where he lived. Little did they know, on his way, the staff actually crossed paths with Kate, that was George's sister. She was coming down to the station to see what happened, to see if George had stayed at the station overnight or whatever, because he did not come home. And eventually they realized that he had not been home. He did not come back the next morning. Oh, thank you so much, Mark. And they decided to open the office, but the office was locked. The cashier's office at the station, they didn't have the key. So they were gonna break down the door, but they were like, okay, let's send someone on the roof of the station, so they'll be able to look through the window to see if anything was wrong. So they sent the staff on the roof, and the staff looked through the window. Well, the window was open actually, and he could see George's body, laying on the floor. His throat had been cut. He had been brutally murdered. There was still some cash on the desk. So eventually they called the carpenter, and they broke the door. So everyone stepped in the office and stuff. So that was not great in terms of forensics. And would you believe, at first they put it down as suicide because there was still some cash on the desk. Although his throat had been cut very deep. It'll be difficult to cut your throat that deep, but because there had been a few cases in England of a cashier at the station stealing from the till, they believed he might have done the same, and then he might have got caught up with his crime and decided to end his own life, But they couldn't find the key anywhere. If indeed he had locked himself in the office and taken his own life, then they would have found the key in his pockets or anything. They didn't. And eventually, as the pathologist, actually, the doctor, that's a bit sad, but it happened to be George's own cousin, the first one that arrived on site. They very quickly realized that it was not self-inflicted. He had a big head trauma as well. He had been hit by we know now, by a hammer actually, and then his throat was slit. So it was indeed murder. But how did the murderer come out? The key was locked the door was locked from the inside. They assumed that the killer might have left through the roof. At that point, they didn't realize that any money was stolen because you still had some cash on the desk. So they just imagined it was a murder and that's it. Welcome everyone that just joined. And eventually they decided to do all the accounts. The station manager made sure the money was safe, you know. That was his main worry. And when they started to count the money, they realized that some of it would have been missing. Quite a lot of it. We're talking about 15 years of labor for a poor laborer at the time. So that was a huge amount of money. And that would have been very heavy, because we're talking about coins, you know, gold and silver and heavy change. They estimate that it would have been about between 25 and 30 kilograms. So that's like the weight of a little boy, you know. So it would have been quite heavy for the murderer to carry all that cash. And so of course they called the authorities. The police came up, and they investigated, of course. They decided not to tell much to the press. At the time, you know, the inspectors and stuff, they usually kept the press well informed. But on this occasion, they decided not to. Just not to spoil the inquiries and stuff, you know, if the killer was aware of the investigation, that could mess up with everything. And apologies if I've missed anything in the chat. You know, with YouTube, it disappears very quickly. If I've missed any questions, do ask again. Anyway, let's turn down this side. And so yeah, the police was actually lost. They had no clue. The thing is, there were so many people living in the station. They had so many people to interview. They actually called a guy, a local handyman. His name was Spoilen. He was, or Spolin, it was sometimes spelled differently. He was asked to go down the roof to see if anything had been looking suspicious on the roof. So the guy did, and nothing was suspicious on the roof. They still couldn't find the key, which was very odd. And the police was pretty sure that whoever the murderer was, that would have been someone that worked at the station, or that had some very strong connection to the station workers, because he would have known his way around, he would have known which office to go in, he would have known that there's a lot of cash in the cashier's office. And the police investigated, they asked every question they could ask to everyone. But the thing is, a lot of people lied to the police. It was a bit like a whodunit, you know, like an Agatha Christie, with all those people from the station. A lot of them actually lied, but it's because they had their own little problems to cover up for. For example, one guy lied, but it's only because he was actually busy that night pawning a pair of trousers, because he was a gambling addict. Another one lied because he was an alcoholic, but everyone would make themselves sound more suspicious. There was a little staff, Catherine. She was the maid of Mr. Barnett Gunning. She was like, yeah, I've heard the footsteps in the office, and I knew it was George's footsteps. And as her boss was gone, we're talking weeks later. I mean, that took weeks. The murder happened in November, but it took weeks and months before to have any development. And then she was like, yeah, I couldn't tell you in front of Gunning, but it was Gunning's feet I heard in the office, and you know. So the police was very heavily criticized in the press. Bearing in mind, those detectives were still fairly new. And they had not had a murder in Dublin since 1842. So from 1842 to 1856, they have not convicted anyone for murder in Dublin. Even Scotland Yard was called in at some point. but they were not very useful. They left after a few weeks. They couldn't find the Garda is here. It's not for me. I've been behaving, so it's not for me. I don't know if you could see the car, but the police in Ireland, it's called the Garda, or the Gardae plural, I think. I think it's one Garda, two Gardae. Anyway, so Scotland Yard left. Eventually, they did find a big clue. They found a bucket full of change that was very well hidden in the station building. A lot of money, probably about I don't know, about let's say a quarter of the total amount. And well, it was £45, but I don't know how much that'll be in today's money, because they were still using the pound, of course, at the time. And that was it. There was nothing happening. The police was completely stuck. They knew. They were convinced that the killer was a staff. They were convinced the killer was still in the building. Actually, you know what? They were so desperate. They actually called in a French psychic, a French medium, but they forgot to book in a translator. So they didn't actually know what the French lady was telling them. Well, all they knew is that the French lady was saying the killer is still in the building, the killer is still in the building. But that's all they knew, really. And it went, I mean, they never gave up, but it went a bit cold. They had drawn, there was a canal next to the station. They had drained the canal. They had found a razor that could have been the razor that cut his throat, and they did find a hammer that, would you believe, still had a bit of hair. So then they had exhumed the cashier's body to place the hammer on the skull, you know, on the injury, to see if it could be the hammer that was responsible for the injury. They concluded that yes, and the hammer, it came from the station. They contacted the blacksmith, and it was indeed the hammer from the train station. But that wasn't really leading to any leads, because at the train station they didn't keep a record of who was borrowing which tool. So that didn't really lead anywhere. Until one day, months later, there's a lady, Mary Spoilin. She steps into the police station. And she said to them she had some information about the murder at the station. She wanted to tell them who the murderer was, and she knew who it was, because it was no other than her husband, James Spoiling. And the police, of course, listened to the evidence. That was a bit embarrassing, because James Spoiling, that's the gentleman the police had hired the first day to go on the roof to check if anything was suspicious on the station roof. And so Mary told them that she had known for many months that her husband was responsible for the killing. This light is taking forever. So she had known for many months, but she'd only decided to come to the police now because she believed that her husband had just tried to kill her. The husband had tried to poison her. Apparently, a week earlier, she had felt very, very sick. Her body was shaking and she was in bed. And apparently, the husband, James, did not want the kids to call a doctor. He did not want to let her get treatment. And she was convinced. We still don't have any evidence on whether he was trying to poison her or not. And apologies, this light is never going green. And should I go? No. Let's be safe. Let's wait. And so yeah, that's how she came to tell the police. She had seen her husband that night going on the roof of a forge next door with a big bucket. And apparently after that, he had told her, I've got a lot of money, I've killed the cashier. And he also told her where he had hidden the money. So Mary took the police officers down to the station, and she herself showed them where the money, finally it's green. She showed them where the money was. So they found most of the money. It was hidden in the station, but very well hidden. Some of it was hidden in the latrines, so literally in the poo. It was hidden across the station, but very well hidden, so she knew. The police had a bit of an issue though, because at the time, would you believe, whatever her wife had to say about her husband was not, it couldn't be admitted in court. It could not be used as evidence. I know it sounds a bit ridiculous to us today, but at the time, a husband and a wife were almost considered like one person, you know. You couldn't testify against your husband. So they couldn't use any of the information they had from the wife. And, they went and arrested James Spoilin. He was a handyman. He had helped with a lot of things at the station. He had only one eye, so he might look a bit scary because of that. It was an infection he had as a child. Mary and James, they had 3 kids. The oldest one, James, was 16 years of age. So he was also called James, like his father. Anyway, little pause in the story. Hold it there. Now, this was the site of Newgate. Can you guess what Newgate used to be? I don't actually know if that very wall here belonged to Newgate. I think most of it was exactly, Jenny, a prison, exactly like the Newgate in London. It was the main prison for a long time in Dublin. It's named after the London one, but there was also outside the gates of the city, like in London. And this was a court of justice here. And I've taken you down this way because guess what they used to do in front of Newgate? What do you think they might have been up to in front of Newgate prison? Let me know in the chat. It's not too hard to guess because it's quite similar or exactly the same as what we used to do in front of Newgate prison in London. Exactly, Sandy, exactly, Herbie. That was the site of the public executions. Well, in the latest time, I think late 18th century and probably beginning of the 19th century as well. Before that, it used to be at St. Stephen's Square, St. Stephen Green, where we might finish the tour if we don't get lost. But yeah, this little, now it's a lovely little park, but that used to be the site of the public executions. Exactly, Laurie. Now, let's get back to our story. So the wife is at the station, they've arrested James. Of course, he denied everything. The wife, not only did she tell them the location of the money, she also told them where he dropped the key. And they actually found the key. But the thing is, once they used the key, it did open the door, but apparently there was a key, how do you call them? A key smith? A key, what do you call them? Anyway, the guy that makes the key, they said that key could have opened any gate, you know, that they were not very specific at the time, so that couldn't be used as evidence. And then she said she knew where the razor was dropped. So they drained the canal again, and they found another razor that, would you believe, was engraved with the name Spoilin. I don't know what type of a killer is stupid enough to use a weapon that is actually engraved with your name, but apparently he did. Locksmith, thank you. Thank you, Linda. And so, yeah. So it seems like they've got quite a lot against him, but really, if you cannot use what she says as evidence, it's not that much. And they decided to interview the kids, though, because the kids can be used as evidence. So they actually locked up little James, the 16 years old. He had just started himself working at the station as well. Well, actually, they locked him up for about 3 weeks illegally. Apparently, they were not meant to do that. So there was a bit of an issue for the prosecution at the trial. Anyway, the day of the trial came. But the jury was asked to convict a man. He would have been hanged just because they found a razor with his name on it in the canal. And because his wife claimed he was the killer, but of course that couldn't be used as evidence. But how would she have known the location of the money, though? Unless she was trying to frame it. I mean, I don't think it's very likely, but if indeed he had tried to kill her, that would be a motive for her to try to frame him from a murder and get him hanged, you know. But then, I mean, if you start going down that way, you'd have to think that she would have to have known the actual killer, because she knew where the money was, you know. So you'd have to go quite far-fetched in your theories. Then maybe she would have had an affair with the actual killer and stuff, but that's very far-fetched, you know. Anyway, the jury had a difficult decision to make, but they acquitted him. So he was let go. And he actually, would you believe, he actually said, okay, tell my wife to make me some breakfast. There was no way she was going to go back with him, actually. And then after that, he tried... Well, he kept trying to claim his innocence. At that point, you know, once you had been tried, you couldn't be tried again. So he could have just said, yeah, I've done it. He couldn't be, you know, I mean, he wasn't going to do that, of course, but he could have, you know. He didn't. What he did, at that point, he skint, and he wanted to emigrate to America, you know, or leave the country, because he was in danger, you know. People could have attacked him, you know. A lot of people were still convinced of his guilt, of course. So he wanted some money. So he put up some kind of an event in a theater. I'll show you the location in a moment. Where he said, "Oh, come and buy tickets to my show. I'll tell you my version of the story and blah blah blah." Actually, hi Sarah, and welcome everyone that just joined. Actually, when there are a few people that turned up, he was basically just on stage begging for money. He didn't really say much about his version of the story. A lot of the police officers were there, of course, because they wanted to hear what he had to say. But yeah, he was just begging for money. The event didn't go down well. His son, the little James, the 16 years old, decided to stick with his dad. When Mary and the two other kids, they were given some fake names and the opportunity to emigrate to maybe Australia or Canada, or we don't know, but to leave the country. And at that point, he's still staying here in Dublin. He's desperate for money to emigrate, but somehow he's still trying to claim his innocence, which is, if you ask me, it's a bit odd. So I actually wonder if maybe he could have been innocent. I doubt it, but you know. Anyway, there was a doctor in Liverpool that was. His name was Frederick Fridges. He was convinced that you can take the measurement of somebody's skull, and you could know if he was a good person or not. Now, it's a pseudoscience. I mean, we know today it's probably ridiculous, but the doctor, all he had to study were the skulls of the dead criminals, you know, the ones that had been hanged. And the doctor contacted Spoiling. He was like, I want to measure your head. Would you let me do that? At that point, Spolin probably didn't know it was a pseudoscience. You know, he probably believed it was a serious thing, but he wanted the money. So he agreed to go down to Liverpool to have his head measured by the doctor, and but only at one condition. It's that the doctor would pay him. This way, he would pay him enough to buy a ticket to go for him and his son to go down to America. And again, if he was guilty, why did he accept to do that? You know, because surely that science would prove that his head was the head of a criminal, unless he was innocent, or unless he didn't care because, you know, they couldn't trial him again anyway. So who knows? Look at those lovely little cottages there. Probably Georgian cottages. Back in the day, this area was a bit of a slum. It was very poor. Well, a lot of Ireland used to be very poor, you know, until about 40 years ago now, when it's much richer thanks to all those international companies coming here to pay less taxes. Anyway, back to Spoiling. He made enough money. There's a book about the subject. The author that did a lot of research on the case believes that he's jumped on a ship to America with his son. So the two of them, with fake names, of course, but he believes the two of them moved to New York. They did try to take him down so he was acquitted for the murder, but they did try to take him down for robbery, for taking the money, but he was acquitted again because there was no more evidence of that. Which really, well, we know from his wife, so the wife knew everything. She even knew how the murder was committed. He introduced himself into the office. He waited for the cashier to enter as the guy was hidden, and then only after George Little locked himself in, then only did he strike. And the kids had seen him. He didn't actually hide the money in the station straight away. Right after the murder, he had one big, very heavy bucket of money, and here is the River Liffey. And he had climbed over the top of a forge next door, and he had gone all the way up to the chimney. And what he did is he had a long metal stick that he dropped on the top of the chimney, like horizontally, you know. And then he attached the bucket to the stick. So from, you know, no one could see anything. You couldn't see it from the bottom of the chimney. You know, if anyone came into the forge, you couldn't see it from anywhere. But two of his kids, including James, the kid that believed in his innocence, two of his kids had actually seen him go up the old forge. He then claimed that he was playing a prank on the guy in the forge, dropping some water to extinguish the fire, but there was no one in the forge anyway, so who knows? It does seem like his wife did know quite a lot, so he does look very guilty if you ask me, but who knows? Anyway, let's go down this side. So we're crossing the river now. This is the city council, and we'll go down to the back to go towards Christchurch. Oops, I should go because the light takes forever over here. Oops. Down to my right, we're not going to go because there's not much to see, but there's a pub that claims to be the oldest in Ireland. It's not. I've been to the oldest in Ireland 2 days ago. 2 days ago? Yesterday. No, 2 days ago. Well, whenever that was. It's not in Dublin, it's in the middle of the country. So there's one pub here that lies. Now let's go down towards Christchurch. Back in the day, Now it's starting to rain. I might have to take the umbrella. Back in the day, this used to be the middle of an area called Hell. It was full of brothels, medieval brothels, and yeah, it was not the best area at the time. Now let me check under our feet because we might have some little surprises. Here, there's one here. So there's an artist that produced those little plaques all around the area. It's basically the items. You see some kind of a dagger there. This is basically the items that were found in this area from the Vikings. Because would you believe it is the Vikings that kind of settled in Dublin. They kind of created the city. And excavation found a lot of interesting Viking items. So it's a nice little tribute to that you can find on the floor. Now this is Christ Church. It's Church of England, Church of Ireland, so Protestant. But they have a few surprises inside. I've not been inside. I've not seen them. They have a mummified or a dried up heart from a saint, whatever saint it is, and they also have a mummified Tom and Jerry. Yes, you've heard it right, Tom and Jerry, a cat and a rat. It's on display inside. I'm afraid I can't show you any photos because I forgot my second phone and I'm on YouTube. I'm not on Prism, so I don't have the access to the photos. But what happened is in 1850, they found in the pipes of the organ. Now, let me show you some more of the Viking stuff. In the pipes of the organ, they found a dead cat and a dead rat. The cat had been literally chasing the rat inside of the pipes, but they got stuck, both of them. So they got dried up. So now they're chasing each other for eternity. And somehow the church has decided to keep them. So they are in a collection inside. I said Tom and Jerry, but I didn't make that up. Some people call them Tom and Jerry. So why not? Beautiful building. It's quite nice with the light looking a bit dramatic. So we are in the heart of the area that would have been full of medieval brothels. And well, like many cities, you know, brothels were quite common in those days. And talking about brothels and brothel keepers, I'll show you a very cool pub across the street. It is named after a whore, a witch, a murderer, potentially. Maybe, I say maybe because there's absolutely no evidence of that, but potentially the first serial killer in the country. But I'll tell you, let's cross over if we can. I'll tell you the story in a sec because I want to show you the building next to it as well. So this is the Darky Kellys. I don't think the original brothel was exactly on that spot. I think it was on the street behind. But you know, it's always a good marketing point to have a ghost and to have, well, especially a serial killer. Anyway, quite a cool pub. I went in there earlier. Well, I popped in there to go for a wee. But lovely pub. It is said to be. I'll show you. Look, that's the story here of the. It was called the Maiden Tower, the brothel itself. They have some live music event. I can hear some live music right now. Actually, I don't know if you can hear it. But anyway, I'll tell you the full story in a moment. For now, let me show you the hotel next to it. It is it is said to be the place, well, that's where they used to have a concert hall, and it is said to be the place where Handel played the first performance of Messiah. There you go. George Frederick Handel, the first performance of the Messiah took place right here. Now, that's not the only place, the only stuff that took place here. Remember earlier I told you that our murderer, James Spoylen, he had a little performance in a theater. That was the same place. It changed its name, but it went from being a music hall to the St. Patrick's Theatre. St. Patrick's Theatre was named after Queen Victoria's seventh, I think it is her seventh child, because they believed, I don't know whether there's any evidence of that, but Victoria had come to Ireland for a 2 weeks tour, and they believed that little Patrick was conceived in Ireland. That's why. Anyway, let's go back to Darky Kelly. I'll tell you what we know. Well, we don't know much. We think we know that she was from the 18th century and she was a brothel keeper. And she was burned at stake. Well, she was convicted of murdering a shoemaker, and she was hanged only for a few minutes, not long enough for her to die. And then she was burned next to St. Stephen Square. Or Green, it's called, St. Stephen Green, I think. That's not fair, by the way. Men, they would be hanged, that's it. Why do ladies have to be burned? The story came out, so she was convicted of that murder, that's it at the time. And actually, even the date, we're not too sure. But many years later, the story came out that it was actually because she had been, she had an affair with a lord, Simon. He was known as the king of hell because he would spend a lot of time in hell, in this area full of brothels. I'm not sure what you mean, Gregory. Anyway, allegedly she would have fallen pregnant from him, and she would have asked him some money, like a pension for the child. And it is said that he got so annoyed that he accused her of murder, and he accused her of having killed her own baby with some satanic rituals, and he accused her of being a witch, and that he managed to get her convicted and burned. There's no evidence of any of that. We don't even know if she had anything to do with that Simon guy. And then, many more years later, only 27 years later to be precise, the story came out that in her little brothel, they lifted up the floorboard, and they found the bodies of 7 men. Bye for now. They found the bodies of 7 men under the floorboard. So it is said that she was a serial killer. It is said that maybe some of the men that would visit the brothel and that were not, that's quite cool. I think it's cleaning the chewing gums, I think. That looks quite strong. It looks like it's removing the old, the old dirty chewing gums on the street. Anyway, back to the story. So if indeed any of that was true, it was published in the press at the time, but we're talking 27 years later. There's no evidence of her being convicted for any other murders than the one she was convicted of. But she might have been the first serial killer in the country, and definitely the first lady serial killer in the country, and a witch. although it was a bit late for witchcraft. I mean, people still very much believed in witches at the time, but that's not really the period where they used to burn a lot of witches. Anyway, we are now in the area where you might see a lot of people enjoying the pubs. It is, what day is it today? Wednesday? It is Wednesday, so not maybe not the busiest day. You can see the flags up there. The Irish flag, would you believe it was actually inspired by the French one? I cannot understand why. No offense to my fellow French people, but the French flag is not the most exciting flag ever, is it? It's a bit dull, really. The best flag, I think, it's the Brittany flag. It's if you don't know what it looks like, the Brittany flag, it looks like the US flag in terms of well, it's actually inspired by the US flag, but it's even nicer. It's black and white only. Anyway, here we are on Temple Bar, and you can see the Christmas decos are already out. And I'm glad they're still on, because I didn't know what time they turned them off. Because, you know, in many capitals in Europe nowadays, they turn them off about 11, or because they want to save electricity, you know, for the planet and stuff. So I wasn't too sure how green was Dublin on that matter. But yeah, here we are. So this is the spot where there's a live cam as well, I think. Tish, you know about the live cam, don't you? If you want to check the Dublin live camera, you should be able to see me on camera in a few seconds. I think I spotted a camera earlier. I don't know if it's the one, but there's one right there in the corner. So if anyone knows how to check that live camera, I'll show you. I think it might be that one up there. See this one? I don't even know what the website is, but I know there's one website where you can see it live. So let me know in the chat if you see me on the live Temple Bar camera. And let me show you the beautiful deco again. This is the most famous of the pubs around here, but there are quite a few lovely pubs. They're probably not the cheapest in town. Yes, Laurie, yes, you can see me, or yes to another question? You see me? Okay, let me turn around and wave. Hello. Cool. Let's keep going, because we still have a bit of a walk. Now, I told you I would tell you about the Grange Gorman murders. You didn't see me? Oh no. Well, I waved to somebody, whoever was watching. Now, oh, you see me? Oh, it's probably just a minute delayed, because I'm kind of gone now. Well, I'm just 20 meters away, but yeah. Anyway, so it's probably me being delayed rather than the camera. Anyway, whatever. The Grange Gorman murders. So remember, we're talking about the area where we started, not right next to the station where we started, or the former station. That was the area. Nowadays it's a university campus, but back in the day it was a spot where there was a big psychiatric institution. And you had some people that where their mental health were very bad, so they had to be in the hospital itself. And you had some people that were still suffering from some kind of mental health issues, but that could be a bit more independent. So in front of the hospital, you had those accommodations with some flat chairs. where some people could live more independently, with a nurse on site. So you'd have a few Victorian terraces, and 1 out of 5 was a nurse, for example. And one of those many flat shells was one with 3 ladies. They were in the, well, 2 of them were in their 60s and 1 was in her late 40s. So they would have been at the hospital at some point, but now they were a bit better. They were able to live individually, you know, or independently from the hospital, knowing that they had a nurse just 2 doors down if they needed. And one night, one of those ladies went out. She went out to be on bingo. She had a very good night. That sounds fun. By the way, random, but you know, next week we've got a tour in Soho in London. I'm gonna have to move it to the next day because I'm going to bingo myself. We've got some fun bingos in London. It's more like a nightclub than a bingo. But yeah, just so you know, I'm moving it to the hello.
Twitch, live for Twitch, no.
You're live on YouTube, yeah.
YouTube?
Yeah.
Oh,
Hello. Nice to meet you. No, I'm French. Are you Brazilian? Yeah. Okay. Have a good one. Anyway, so she went to bingo, and she actually had a very good night. She won £20. That was in 1997, so the country was still using the pounds. They would have moved to euro, I think, maybe 2 years later. Anyway, so she won at the bingo. She had a very good night, and let me show you a nice statue over here. It looks like another good pub, but I've never been. So she had a good night at the bingo. Then she went to the chippy. She bought some chips for herself, and also a portion to bring back to the nurse. You know, the nurse that lived two doors down. And she then went home. So Anne, she had her chips, you know, and she went down to meet Sylvia. So you had Anne, Sylvia, and Mary. She went down to say hello to Sylvia. She didn't go down to say hello to Mary because she believed Mary was already in bed. Anne put herself into bed. She woke up the next morning. The rest of this story, guys, it sounds like it's out of a horror movie, but it's all a true story. So she woke up in the morning, and as she's going downstairs, she notices that her handbag is on the floor, with the content being spread on the floor. They had been burglared a couple of weeks earlier, so she went to explore in the kitchen because she believed that some people might have broken in. And as she's going down to the kitchen, she did indeed. Oh, there's a horse carriage coming through. Sorry for the camera movement, but it's quite good to show you. So, I'm guessing that's a romantic ride that you can hire if you come to Dublin. Anyway, so she's going down the kitchen. She noticed that the light was on, and yeah, the window was open. And then she decided to go and wake up her friends, of course. When she got to Sylvia's bedroom, Sylvia was on her bed. She had been brutally attacked. I'll spare you the details because it's a bit disgusting, but yeah, she had been killed, and they were stripped naked. I mean, she was, and they had been inserted some object. Well, a fork, I can tell you. The fork was still inserted in Sylvia's body. And the weapons and the fork, I mean, everything came from the flat. It's not like if the killer had brought any weapons with him, he had picked up some stuff in the flat. So she then ran to Mary's bedroom. At first, she couldn't see Mary. Mary was not on the bed. But the body was on the floor, and it was the same. It was she had been brutally attacked and stripped naked, and you know. Anne had not heard anything at night, but that would make sense because she had some problem sleeping, and that night she had slept with a cassette player. You know, in the 90s we still had those little cassettes. So she slept with a cassette player on headphones. Anyway, she ran out on the street, she ran out to tell the nurse, and of course the police turned up and a big investigation started. They did find a boot print, or half of a boot print. There was a caterpillar boot. So caterpillars, they were quite expensive, you know, in the 90s. Well, still today, they're quite expensive boots. They didn't have much else to go on, really. But fairly quickly, they arrested a local heroin addict. His name was Dean. He was a young man, I think maybe 24 years of age, that had, well, he didn't have, I don't know if he had any diagnosed learning difficulties, but it says on the account that his IQ was not very, very high. And the guy confessed. He was arrested and he confessed at the police station on camera, and also he sent a letter to his mother accusing himself of the crime. His account was quite vague, though. He said he didn't quite remember. He only mentioned two victims, like if he didn't know that Anne was there as well. Which is quite surprising because Anne, this is even more creepy. So Anne is the survivor, you know, the one that found the bodies. In her bedroom, they found little traces of blood in the door, on the back of the door. So the killer, after killing the two other ladies, came into Anne's bedroom. He would have stared at her on her bed with the Walkman, you know, with the cassette player in her headphones. And for some reason, he did not kill her. Imagine that. Imagine having a mass murderer in your bedroom and not killing you. That's even creepier, you know. You don't know why he spared you. Anyway, so yeah, and happy Thanksgiving, guys. It sounds more like a Halloween with me, but happy Thanksgiving to anyone in America. Now, thank you, Linda. Now let me show you Molly. If any of you have done any tours in Dublin with any of my Hego guides friends, you might have seen Molly Maloney. She's the one. And it's nice with the winter Dublin. I think you meant to touch her boobs. I don't know what happens when you touch her boobs, but let's touch her. Nearly died, yeah. Let's touch her boobs. I think it's probably good luck. Thanks, Molly. Right. Yep. She's named after a song, by the way, but I don't really know my Irish nursery rhymes, so don't expect me to sing anything for you today. Now, back to our story. So the little Dean is arrested and is gonna be charged for the crime. Although his account of the story was quite vague, he didn't really give a precise description of the inside of the flat. He did not mention the third lady, but you know, he had confessed. He had a perfect profile as much as they were concerned. So he was charged. Now, we are in 1997. A few months later, there's another story. It's gonna seem completely unrelated. It is, bear with me. We're not in Dublin. We are about an hour away from Dublin. There's a lady called Sarah. She decided to go with her new boyfriend, Mark Nash, and their 5-year-old baby, to go down to meet her sister and her boyfriend James. So Sarah and her boyfriend are going down to meet Catherine and James. They're gonna stay over for the weekend. So you've got the two couples and a lot of kids as well. And they had dinner or whatever, you know, lovely evening. And this story is like a horror movie, honestly. At some point, the girls go upstairs, so Catherine and her sister Sarah, probably to arrange the sleeping arrangement, you know, and the boys are downstairs. When they hear someone coming upstairs, so they believe it's one of the boys coming to check, you know, what's happening, how are the sleeping arrangements. And when they look through the door upstairs, the bedroom door, the girls see Mark. He had a very, very scary look in his face. His eyes were different, and he was holding a hammer. And he was saying with a creepy voice, "You have to die." And he attacked the girls. Let me show you the Christmas lights on this side as well. We were going from one extreme to another. So yeah, he's like, "You have to die." And he attacked the girls. They were literally fighting for their life. So he's attacking his girlfriend and her sister. Eventually, Sarah, so his girlfriend Sarah, she managed to escape, and she ran downstairs to tell James what's happening. So she, sadly, at that point, is dealing with Catherine. He killed her with the hammer, and as Sarah got downstairs, she found James on the sofa. She tries to wake him up, but she realized he had been stabbed. So James is already dead. So Sarah ran out in the garden, but she didn't want to run too far because the kids were inside with the mad boyfriend. So she's going into the back garden where the grass was very high, and it's dark, of course, it's late at night, and she's hiding in the grass when Mark comes out and he's like, "Sarah, you have to die." Imagine how creepy. And she's there in the big leaves, the big grass. I mean, she probably was really scared that he could probably hear her breathing, you know. And at that point, he runs off. He runs over the gate, and that's the moment she used to escape. So she ran out through the front door, and she knocked at the neighbors. Of course, the neighbors had a poor lady that was full of blood, so they decided to help her. Little stop in the story. Down that side, it's Trinity College, so the famous Trinity College that was created by Queen Elizabeth I because she wanted a place of Protestant school, really. At the time, Catholics would not go, and it was only boys at the time. Nowadays, you've got girls as well on any religions. I don't know much about Trinity College, but I've seen it in, you know, if any of you have seen the show Normal People on the BBC, if you're in the UK, that's at Trinity College. Anyway, back to our story. So she runs to the neighbors. Of course, they call the police and everything. And Mark Nash, the boyfriend, he ran off. He actually tried to escape to Galway on a bicycle. So for the days that followed, he was on a bicycle all the way to Galway. I was there this morning. In a bus, it's 2.5 hours. So imagine on a bicycle. And he was caught eventually because he was knocking at random doors to ask for a glass of water or stuff like that. And he was caught. So he was convicted of those crimes. I mean, there was no question about it. But apparently, as he was convicted for that, he also confessed of being guilty of the Grange Gorman murders. Now, that was a bit of an issue for the authorities because, well, first it was a different Guarda force, you know, the different police, you know, the Garda in charge of the Grange Gorman murders were not the same as the one that caught him, and you know, the Garda that was in charge of the Grange Gorman murders, they already had their guilty party, and we don't really know why, but it looks like some politics were pushing on charging the little Dean guy anyway. So he did confess, but then he kind of re-rolled his confession. He had, so as he was cycling down to Galway before he got caught, he had sent a letter to the head trauma hospital because he had assumed that Sarah, his girlfriend, had been taken down to hospital for head trauma. He sent her a letter saying, "Oh, I love you. I've just I've got mad, and it's not the first time I've done it before," meaning the Grange Gorman murders, you know. But would you believe he was not convicted of the first series of murders? Because they didn't have enough evidence. They had nothing, really. They had a jacket that he had said he had been wearing that night, the night of the Grange Gorman murders. And many years later, we're talking, I think it was 2009, so nearly 10 years later, eventually, with the improvement of DNA, finally they were able to link him to the first attacks. He was already jailed anyway. He was jailed for the double murder of his sister-in-law on her partner. But yeah, a crazy case. I think he's still alive. He's probably still in jail now. But yeah, you know, when you see those horror movies, well, sometimes it's somebody's life for real. Anyway, let's go down to Merrion Square. I'll show you where Oscar Wilde used to live as a boy. He moved to London when he was fairly young. I think probably about 18, and he never really lived in Ireland again full time. But I'll show you where his parents had a home here. Some of you might remember when we were in Bray a couple of days ago, I told you that his dad, the famous doctor, the eye doctor, William Wilde, the one that was accused of some sexual assault on a patient, that was here in Dublin, and I'll show you the building in a moment. They had summer homes everywhere. He even had a summer home in Galway, where I was this morning, as well as the one in Bray. But their main home was here in Dublin. And I think he also went to Trinity College. A lot of amazing writers have gone to Trinity College. I've not gone into the college myself, but that's where you have, you can see the Book of Kells, and there's quite a beautiful library as well. Now, there's one other series of murders, if indeed it is murders. We don't know that for sure. It's not really down here in Dublin. It's around this area, so we're not going to see any buildings connected to those murders today. But it's such a fascinating story that I decided to tell you anyway. They probably had in Dublin a serial killer in the 90s. We don't know for sure because no one's been caught, but there were a series of girls that went missing. And a lot of journalists now refer to it as the vanishing triangle. So it's in and around of Dublin, going all the way down to the Wicklow Mountains. So where we were 2 days ago in Bray, and in Eskerry and all that, that's part of the vanishing triangle. It started, well, most people believe that there were 6 victims, but there might be a few more. There was a victim called Antoinette. Antoinette was really murdered in 1987. She'd gone to a David Bowie concert, She actually was still wearing the David Bowie t-shirt she bought on the night when her mate wanted to go home and she wanted to party more. So she tried to go to a party somewhere, we don't really know where, and then she was never seen again. Eventually, though, they found Antoinette's body in the Wicklow Mountains. And it's a beautiful area, apparently, the Wicklow Mountains, but it's quite remote, you know, and it's, sadly, if you're trying to hide a body, it's a great spot. And she had been, so she was still wearing the Bowie t-shirt, and she had been strangled. She had a plastic bag, well, two plastic bags on her head. That's a little detail to remember. Anyway, so that's, well, according to me, it would be the first one anyway. And then in the 90s, there were a few girls that went missing. The most famous, the case that made a lot of noise in the press, it is the case of Annie McCarrick. It's because she was American. So, you know, whenever you have a foreigner that goes missing, obviously you've got a bit more pressure, like international pressure, to solve the case. Annie was, I think she was 26. She was from the US. She was from Long Island. She had some Irish heritage, so she was kind of trying to connect with her roots. She had come to study in Ireland a few years earlier, and she loved it, and she wanted to move here long term. Now, I was talking about Oscar Wilde. This is the building, this one in the corner there. That's where the parents had a house, and that's where the doctor, William Wilde, also welcomed his patients. He was an eye doctor. Anyway, back to Annie. So she lived in Dublin, in the south side, in a place called Sandymount. She was still studying. She wanted to be a teacher. And she had a job in a cafe where she would also bake some bakeries and, you know, bring them to the cafe. That morning she'd gone to the bank. There's actually a CCTV camera of her going to the bank. Then she goes to the supermarket. She was gonna go for a walk in Enniskerry at the bottom of the Wicklow Mountains with a friend, but that friend had, I think she injured her ankle or whatever, so she told her she didn't want to go for a walk. And so she comes back home to her flat share with the shopping, and she did not put the shopping in the fridge. She dropped it on the table with some perishable items. So that's what you do if you know you're coming back in 5 minutes, right? Especially if you cook for someone else, because she was baking stuff for the cafe, you know, so, you know, you wouldn't want anyone to have, you know, in terms of health and safety, you know, so that's very unusual that she just dropped the bag and didn't put the perishable in the fridge. But, you know, she went out. She did jump on a bus to go down to Enniskerry. That's pretty much for sure, because the person that spotted her on the bus, it is someone that knew her. You know, when you have missing people, you have a lot of sightings, you know, but some people might just be people that have seen a photograph. That was a lady that knew her. So we're pretty sure she was on that bus for Enniskerry. So Enniskerry, that's at the foot of the mountain. So she could have gone down there to go for the walk anyway. Let me show you the building. That's, I think that's the National Galleries. Right, that's the last sighting of her we have for sure. She had a party the next day. It was actually her birthday, so she had invited some people to come for dinner. She wasn't there when they turned up, so that's why they started to get a bit worried. And her mother was meant to come and visit a couple of days later. And of course, as soon as she heard, she came a bit earlier, and she's the one that reported her missing. And that's all we know. But the reason why I wanted to tell you about that case, it's because about 5 months ago, so that happened in 1997. 5 months ago, there's a family. Well, actually, I don't know if it's a family. There are some people living in the west of Dublin. The Garda, so the police forces, knocked at the door, and they were like, "You've got to go. We're putting you into a hotel for a week. We've got to investigate. We need to excavate your home." I don't know whether they were, did they own the property or were they renting, I don't know. But the police decided to, those people had nothing to do with any murders. It's that the property might have been associated with someone that knew Annie 30 years ago. Imagine the cost of, I mean, they excavated the garden, so the family had to go into a hotel. They actually put a cover because nowadays, you know, people are so curious, they fly drones and everything. So they covered the full building so the drones couldn't get any pictures or any videos. And they excavated the gardens. The home had been built on, you know, they had a new shed in the garden and stuff like that. As far as we know, they didn't find anything. It's because that property had been associated with a guy that Annie used to know. Apparently there were a couple of brothers that she, I think she kind of dated one of them and she might have dumped him or something. They already at the time, they knew that he was a bit stalky with Annie. Anyway, that probably cost more than 100,000 euros, and they didn't find anything. But you know, people did not forget about that case. It's very much a big missing person. We don't know what happened after Ines Carey. She might have gone down to a pub called Johnny Fox. It's a quite famous pub at the bottom of the mountain. The doorman swears that he recognized her and that she was followed by a man, because you had to pay to go into the pub. You had a €5 cover fee. And the doorman says, yes, she came in, she didn't know about the fee, so the guy behind her paid for her. They didn't look like they knew each other, apparently. But there's no evidence that the doorman actually was right. You know, there might have been another American girl that night, and there's no evidence that she ever went into that pub. Now, the thing that happened about 5 months ago, it's apparently because the guy that is a wealthy businessman now in Ireland, his brother had given him an alibi, and the police had gone. The brother now lives in a care home in France, and apparently when he was chatting to the guarder, he chatted a bit too much, and he said something that contradicted the alibi that he had given his brother 30 years ago. Anyway, let me show you this beautiful building. I think that's where the Prime Minister lives, or his office. I don't know whether he lives in there, but it's like the government. Now back to Annie. We never found out what happened to Annie. That guy seemed to be a good suspect now, so if indeed it was that guy, then it might not have been a serial killer. But after Annie, there were a few more ladies that went missing. They might not have all been the same killer. There's a lady called Jojo that she was hitchhiking. She had come down to Dublin, where she met her ex, and they went to a pub. They had a lot of drinks, and they decided to spend the night together. So she missed her last bus, that would have been at 6 p.m. Then she's still in the pub with her ex when the actual girlfriend stepped in. So there was a big issue between the ex and the girlfriend, and Jojo decided to leave. But she had missed the last bus, so she went hitchhiking. She got a few rides. Those people were interviewed by the Garda, and eventually she was in the middle of nowhere about 11 p.m. In the Wicklow Mountains. She was still quite far away from home, and she had gone to a telephone booth to call her friend, saying, "Oh, I don't know if I'll make it tonight. You know, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm hitchhiking." And then she let the phone down. She ran away, and she grabbed the phone back to her friend. She said, "Bye bye, I've got a ride." So she jumped into a car. We don't know. We don't even know whether that person was the killer, but she was never seen again. There was another lady called Deirdre Jacob. that also disappeared. The body was never found. So there were quite a few in the 90s, at least 6. When eventually the year 2000, there's a lady that was kidnapped out of nowhere, broad daylight, and she was taken to the Wicklow Mountains when the when the guy assaulted her. You know what I mean, I cannot say the R word, but he assaulted her once, then back in the boots, then again, and then as she's fighting for her life, 2 hunters, illegal hunters, arrived, and they kind of interrupted it. So he actually dumped her out of the car and drove off. Sadly for him, one of the hunters actually knew him because he had a bad rep. He was a father of 2, but he, some of the ladies said that he was creeping on them in the bars and stuff. So they recognized him. His name was Larry Murphy. So he was arrested and he was jailed. Sadly, he was only jailed for 10 years. I think they gave him 14, you know, for attempted murder, kidnapping on the R ward. But he was a brilliant prisoner. You know, he was perfect in prison. So with all the reduction, you know, he came out after 10 years. But during those 10 years, the murders or the vanishing girls, that stopped, you know. And he's free now. Sadly, sadly, I don't know, he could be innocent, but he's out. He went to Spain, he went to the Netherlands. Now he lives in London, as far as we know. His name is Larry Murphy. Now, the reason why he's a very, very good suspect, it's that apparently one night in prison with another criminal, another murderer, they got drunk on prison booze. You know, sometimes they make their own alcohol. And apparently on that night, he told the other guy how he killed Deirdre Jacob, one of the latest victim. And the other guy, so he told the Garda, the other guy had nothing to, it's not like if he was going to get a shorter sentence or anything. He had nothing to win, telling the police. It's just that he was a father himself, and he believed it was the right thing to do. So I tend to believe him, but you know, he's a criminal as well, and you know, we just don't know, do we? Now, I don't know if you can read, but that's the Huguenot cemetery. So the Huguenots, I'm sure a lot of you remember them because we talked about them in a lot of my tours before. So they were the French Protestants. They were badly treated in France after the edict of Nantes. A lot of them came to London, a lot of them came to Dublin, and they were in the weaving industry. Now, there's not much to see in the cemetery, but it's a little burial ground. Now, apparently the Huguenots in Dublin, they were quite wild when, because, you know, they were weaving silk and stuff, but when, so at the time you had some gangs over here, you had those liberties, the different jurisdictions outside of the city, they were called liberties, and you had the Huguenot gangs, you had the other gangs. When anyone was buying some cheaper fabrics from abroad, apparently the Huguenots, they attacked them. They would strip them naked and they'll coat them in some kind of warm tar and then drop a bag of sorry, some people are looking at me funny. A bag of chicken feather and stuff. So yes, some of the Huguenot gangs could be a little bit dangerous. Anyway, we are now on St. Stephen's Green. There's nothing to see in the green at night, but that's a lovely little green at daytime. And that was the site of the executions before Newgate. Actually, you know, when we talked about Darky Kelly, well, she was burned here. The potential serial killer, or at least the witch. The square itself, it's very Georgian. They have some beautiful houses around the square. A lot of the doors, there's a little story, it's probably not true, but I'll tell you anyway because it's nice. A lot of the doors are actually painted in different colors, you know, some blue, some pink. It is said that at some point, because of the death of one king, one British king, whichever it was, the story doesn't tell, they were told to paint their doors in black for the mourning of the king, and everyone ran to the shop to buy some colorful paint, and that would be why those doors are painted in pink or blue or light colors today. Probably not true, but I like the story. I think that's a fancy hotel. Anyway, that's gonna be the end of the tour. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions before we go. Or if you have any theories about the vanishing triangle, let me know in the comments, because there are a lot of other suspects that we probably don't have time for today. Well, personally, I think Larry Murphy is a very good one, but it doesn't mean that he killed them all. He probably had a couple or maybe 3 or 4 victims, but it doesn't mean that he's responsible for all of them. He lived himself in the Wicklow Mountains, so geographically, well, it's harder to do some geoprofiling when you don't have bodies, you know, because usually you go with the crime site. All we know is the last places where they were seen. Yeah, I mean, whether it was Larry or not, I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure there was indeed a serial killer in the 90s. Oh, I didn't tell you. Larry, when, so, you know, the girl he dropped out of his car, he was actually in the process of putting a plastic bag around her head. So that's very similar to the Lady Antoinette in 1897. It's literally the same MO. Right, let me see what you guys say in the chat. Cool, thank you guys for coming today. Let me know if you have any questions for me. Let me flip this camera around. Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, everyone. So don't forget, tomorrow, 3:30 Irish time, I'm taking you to Malahide. It's in County Dublin, but it's a bit further north on the seaside. And we'll have one murder, 6 murders, but in one go. But that's not the main story. The main story is a very compelling case of reincarnation. So make sure you join me tomorrow in Malahide. And that'll be the last leg of my Irish trip. Oh yes, thanks Sam. If you give it a like, that always helps with the algorithms. And if any of you was completely new to me, if you've made it that far, if you've been with me for the last hour and a half, you might want to consider subscribing. The best way not to miss those live streams is to subscribe and to hit the little notification bell. This way you get a notification as I go live. Now,
guys, I'm in Dublin right now, and vibes really fucking good.
Some people are mocking me, but they're not funny. Anyway, he's just like, hey guys, I'm in Dublin right now. And then he was out of inspiration. Anyway, whatever. Right, thank you for coming, guys. If you want to join it tomorrow, so 3:30 Malahide in Dublin. And if any of you dropped me a little tip on PayPal or buy me a coffee, that's very, very much appreciated as well. It's really thanks to your generosity that I can keep going and do more research and buy more books. And oh, talking about books, you know what? I've got a book about the murders in Dublin. Not a great one. I mean, I didn't get many fascinating stories from the book. But anyway, first, the book, I bought it online, you know, secondhand. I tried not to buy them new because well, I need to make a profit out of those stores. If I was buying new books, I probably wouldn't. Anyway, so second-hand book, it turned up in my mailbox. First, it's been stolen from a library in Dublin. You know, when you have the library thing, when they have the stamp on everything. So I think it's been stolen about 2019. And there's a murder from the 60s. I didn't tell you the murder because it's It's a bit gruesome. It's a young Indian guy that killed his girlfriend and he burned the pieces, and the fireman came and he was like, no, there's nothing to, anyway, whatever. Gruesome murder, it's not what's interesting. In the pages of the book, someone had corrected the author. You know, at some point he said constable, whatever, and they crossed it like Garda, you know, and so I think it's someone that was, someone that was somehow connected to the murder. Was it a police, a Garda inspector that took the book from the library and corrected it, or maybe it's the Garda that stole the book from the library and corrected it. But it's only that very murder. No other murders are corrected, but that one, there's a lot of little correction, you know, handwritten. So I'm like, who's been in the possession of this book before? Or was it the murderer itself, you know? Who knows? Anyway, that's an interesting little detail about the book. Well, I don't know if they do that. It is possible. I don't know if maybe, because it's not, I've got another book from, I think it's The Murders of South London or something. It's from the library in South London as well. So maybe they do that every so often. Maybe they discard some of their collection and then they're being sold on eBay or second-hand market. I don't know. It's possible. Maybe every so often they have too many books and they can't keep up. Who knows? Well, I think it's stolen, but who knows? How do you think they often sell them, Laurie? Maybe. Although, well, you'd think if it was sold, they'd remove because you know the thing with all the stickers, it's a little, you could remove it before to sell it. Anyway, who knows? I'm more fascinated by whoever corrected it, because to correct it, I mean, they were literally correcting the title of the police constable, so they would have known that guy. Anyway, thank you for coming today, guys. I'm gonna get going because we need to save some data, international data, for tomorrow. Have a great evening or a great morning, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world, and hopefully I'll see most of you tomorrow in Malahide. Bye, guys. Have a good one. Bye bye.